The music throbbed through the club like a second heartbeat, lights flashing rhythmically to the beat of the music. The floor was a sea of moving bodies, all energy and excitement, but all eyes were on stage. Was fulfilling her own part of the dare night, a dance with a random stranger. She do pull from the crowd. She was enjoying the dare a little too much. Vine had a wide grin on her face when she was finally done. She walked towards them like a celebrity and threw a wink in their direction before slipped into her seat. Everyone clapped and she laughed. Who's next? You seem to make every day look so easy. It was easy, and well, that boy was kind of hot, so I had to take my chance. She said and raised her wrist. Her friends looked at her wrist, and all of them grinned. Got his number. Damn, Anne muttered, impressed at her friend's advance. Her eyes went to the crowd and she screamed, her gaze accidentally locking with those intense dark eyes from across the bar. He was watching her from past hour, an unreadable expression on his face, a small smirk playing at the corner of his lips. He rushed to her cheeks and she quickly turned away. She thought she was imagining, but he really seemed to be drilling hole in herself. Or maybe it's all in her head. There's so many girls around her. Your turn, Van. Van snapped her head towards her friend. See that guy, the one with the black jacket on? Go, try your way with him, flirt with him, turn on the charm. Her eyes widened as she followed her friend pointed figure to the stranger. The very thought sent a wave of nervous energy through her. Can I pick something else? Alright, if you're not for a simple flirt, how about giving a mic lap dance instead? Van cringed visibly. Mike was not someone to be messed with, not because he was tall and literally smirking, but because he was famous for much more than one scandal in university. Not in a million years. She glanced back at the stranger. This time he was casually sipping his drink, seemingly indifferent, which somehow made tears slightly less daunting. Fine, but I need some liquid first. Give me 2 shots because there's no way I can do this sober. Mia clapped her hands and signaled the bartender. Moments later, 2 shots of tequila were placed in front of Wine. She grabbed the first glass. To embarrassing myself, she tossed before downing the shot in one smooth motion. The second followed quickly, the burn of the alcohol stealing her nerves. She stood up, her legs felt wobbly, whether from the alcohol or nerves. She couldn't tell. She smoothed her dress, took a deep breath to settle the buzzing in her head, and started walking towards the man. Hi, she started, her voice slightly stronger than she felt. I noticed you noticing me. I wanted you put on notice that I noticed you too. She quipped, repeating the line from a movie she barely remembered, hoping it sounded smoother out loud than it did in her head. Embarrassing. The stranger lips twitched into a smirkingly amused. His gaze was tense and flinching, and his scan went from head to toe, taking in her slightly disheveled yet alluring appearance. Is that so? He said, his voice smooth and deep, rich with a confidence that completely put her slightly off balance. He leaned back against the bar, giving her a better view of his well-built physique. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up to the elbow, revealing tattoos that snaked around his forearm. She stared at him, his broad shoulder, the casually tousled hair, and the piercing gaze that seemed to see right through her. She took a deep breath. She took a seat beside him. His gaze seemed to not leaving hers for a second. I guess it's only fair if I introduce myself to that line, right? I'm Vine. Vine, her name rolled off his tongue, rich, velvety, and you're right, I was noticing you. Hard not to really. She felt shivering down her spine. She was supposed to act brave, yet the alcohol didn't make it much easier. He was flirting back, really, she was supposed to do that. But bring a guy like you here alone in a night like this, just enjoying the view? She said, trying to act nonchalant, yet it was hard to. He kept staring at her with those intense gaze. Something like this, he replied, his voice low. But I'm beginning to think that the views getting even more better up close. His straightforwardness caught her off guard. Her pulse quickened, she laughed, a sound more nervous than she intended, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She noted how his gaze follows every small movement. You're quite charming, aren't you? His lips curved into a half smile. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. Perhaps, he replied, but it seems to be working. You have not run away yet. She bit her smile. He leaned back and stared at her. You want a drink? He asked, one eyebrow arching perfectly. How could she refuse an offer, especially when it was made such a casual yet enticing invitation? I could go for a drink. What's your favorite? You want to know my favorite? Van placed her hand on the counter, slightly leaning in to look at his face more clearly. Yeah, I want to know, does your taste is as interesting as you? Only if she was sober. Thanks to the alcohol, the embarrassment she felt was well hidden. He looked at her amused. He mirrored her pose, leaning in, their faces inches apart. Whiskey, he said simply. Neat, it's straightforward, strong, with a bit of a bite, kind of like me. She chuckled, a sound little bolder this time. Whiskey, I think I can handle that. He signaled the bartender, ordering 2 glasses of his preferred whiskey. As they waited, he studied her with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. Do you always approach strangers this early? Or the day gave you the courage? He asked. Van pressed her lips together. How do you know? He smiled. Well, you have that. I'm up to something wild about you. Plus, I noticed your friends cheering you on. It seems like you might be fulfilling a dare tonight. Am I right? Well, yeah, you guessed it right. Here's your drink. He passed her the drink and she took it gladly, their hands brushed against each other, and she felt the tingling feeling inside her. She barred her lips and held the drink tightly. He seemed to notice a slight reaction too. And regaining her composure, her gaze went to her friend, who was grinning at her direction. She sent them a grin, taking up a sip. Her gaze couldn't help but drift over to the man in front of her. Their knees were touching, yet he didn't seem to mind. Not that she minded it at all. Her gaze taking in his appearance more in detail. And then it paused when she noticed a stylish watch on his wrist. It was sophisticated yet understated, hinting at a person who cared about details. I must say, you have a quiet sense of fashion. I'm not saying it as a part of dare, but as someone who really appreciates good style. Cheng glanced down at his watch. Thank you, he responded, lifting his wrist slightly as if watching the watch for the first time. This whole thing is actually a gift from a trip to Switzerland. You can say more of a graduation gift. It's more sentimental than fashionable. As the night goes on, Van finds herself more attractive to the person she met just a minute ago. Though for the first time she don't regret doing a dare, it turned out to be quite good. Yeah, she forgot to ask the name of the stranger that night who captivated her attention after so long. She splashed cold water on her face. She tried to shake off the fog of sleep and a slight headache. After a long night at a party and staying up later than usual, her body was begging for a bit of rest. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, noting the tired eyes. She retouched her makeup just enough to cover the look presentable and hide the evidence of her short night. It was not much, just a slight makeup to bring some color back to her face and ensure she doesn't look like a zombie wandering through her morning classes. Feeling slightly more refreshed, she gathered her things and walked out. As she turned around, her steps slowed, then stopped entirely as a deep familiar voice reached her ear. It was distinctive, maintained, and confident. She paused as she turned around the source. Her breath caught in her throat when her eyes confirmed what her ears already knew. This standing in front of a small group of students was the same stranger she was with. He was dressed more formally than last night, his casual, charming demeanor replaced by a professional, somewhat stern expression. He was here, in her university, interacting with the student in a way that suggested he was not just visiting. Of color, as she pieced together most likely the reason for his appearance. How could she have not known? She was supposed to interact with him now. How she was supposed to interact with him now? Knowing they were literally flirting and imagining what he was her professor, she was doomed. If someone get to know about it, it's gonna end up in a bad way. The university was strict about the rules, so she gulped and immediately turned around, hurrying out of there, not wanting him to see her. She know no one gonna know about last night, but it was simple flirting. But she can't guarantee about herself. It would be good if she stay away from him. What a small world. Are you going to keep hiding there? Mia muttered, crouching down beside her. Mia, shh. Van hissed, peeking out slightly to ensure their psychology professor Jung Jungkook of all people had not noticed the desired hiding spot. The last thing she needed was to draw attention to herself, especially from him. Girl, it's not that serious. You're panicking for nothing. It's nothing for you, but for me, it's embarrassing. Remember the last night I was flirting with him like an idiot? She groaned in a low voice. Maya shook her head. You told me he flirted back, right? It means he doesn't know that you are his student too. Because looking at him right now, he definitely would show you your place if you as a student have flirted with him.